Fuck off, man. Let me talk. And like, if you didn't bring any blues with you, we'll make sure we make some for
With so much drive and ambition from an early age, it was obvious that Jimmy's future lay in music.
I think that Jimmy was born with a drive to be a musician. It's quite audible. You can just hear it. The guy was a masterful musician. His friends from the early days, from the 1950s here, say he was a guitar master by the age of 17. You can't say that about too many guitar players.
He was driven. He was on a mission, you know, from a higher source where you've heard his lyrics before, you know. He talks about shit that, or stuff that we can't even comprehend right now, which is very true, you know, as we come to find out that in the future.
In addition to Jimmy being a fan of some early rhythm and blues bands from Seattle when he was a teenager, he also had the direct influence of having crossed paths with a couple great guitar players here in town who were a generation or two older, and one of them was named Bud Brown. He was an African-American guitar player that played with the Dave Lewis Combo. Dave Lewis Combo was seriously and, you know, without a doubt the top rhythm and blues band in town from like 1956 until 1961 or 62, somewhere in there. And Bud Brown was apparently a fabulous guitar player. All of Jimmy's friends say that he loved him and would go to the Birdland Hall and see him play all the time. The Birdland Hall is also where a local band called the Sharps played, and they had a guitar player who was named Butch Snipes, and he was the cat, the wild man in town. He was the guy who played guitar between his legs. He played it behind his back, behind his neck, upside down. He could play it with his teeth. Some of Jimmy's early friends say that that is definitely where Jimmy learned all those tricks, or many of those tricks, from this guy.
Once Jimmy was good enough, he picked up his first electric guitar and started playing with local bands, enabling him to improve on his skills.
I'm going to take the word for some of his guitar playing friends and bandmates like Pernell Alexander, who states unequivocally that they both got their first electric guitars after the summer of 1957. They formed a band together, and it was Jimmy's first band, and they were called the Velvetones. They played for maybe a year and a half or 2 years, as far as I can gather, and then they played a Battle of the Bands one night at a local community hall, and they were up against another band called the Rockin' Teens, and they battled, and I don't know who won the battle, but in the end they recruited Jimmy to quit the Velvetones and come and join the Rockin' Teens. So that was Jimmy's second band, and they played for a while and changed their name. They upgraded it from the Rockin' Teens to the Rockin' Kings. I guess they thought they were now ruling the town. They weren't. They were an obscure band on the scene. There were definitely big bands playing rhythm and blues in Seattle, and they weren't one of them. They were newcomers.
I had a band called the Epics. Jimmy was playing in a group called the Rockin' Kings, but he would play with me sometime also. And then I had a band called the Knights, and he played with me then, you know, around the neighborhood, you know, neighborhood gigs, you know, the Roy Croft, you know, the Birdland. I played with Birdland with Jimmy a lot. That was the biggest club here, you know. I remember Leon saying if you played the Birdland, you had it made, you know. And that was the place that me and Jimmy played a lot. There weren't very many guitar players around that could solo like Jimmy, you know, when he was very young, you know, very young. You know, he added different stuff to the regular, you know, regular music that we would listen to. He added his own taste to it, you know, put his own flavor on it. Now we were somewhere playing together on stage, me and Jimmy, and I was thinking it was just so natural that, I mean, I didn't know he wasn't that great yet. He wasn't a star yet, but he was a star in the community. But I just enjoyed him like he was, you know, I always idolized him and I always admired Jimmy. And it was just like playing with a friend, another friend, you know. He was awesome, but I was honored to play with him, you know, but I didn't know he was going to be such a big star.
The then Jimmy, his big step then was getting asked to join Thomas and his Tomcats, which was a band that was playing more, better, paying, and more prominent gigs. They played all over Washington State and even up into Vancouver, Canada, I think. And so those were his first three bands, and I think they pretty much played the same canon of songs.
Jimmy began to be so good, but so unique that the band members didn't want him to practice with, but they would hire him on Friday and fire him on Sunday. Because every time Jimmy would practice with these guys, he'd be doing this, like, oh, I'm sorry, I heard this thing and I couldn't get it, but you guys were playing the rhythm and blues and I just wanted to do it anyway, and that's why they fired Jimmy. But they will always hire him on Friday because he was the best guitar player in Seattle at the time. And he played with Sammy Drain and Pernell Alexander and the Rockin' Kings, and there was only a few clubs here where you could play. But then there was one giant club that if you played there, that was all over for you in Seattle, and that was called Birdland. It was the rhythm and blues capital of Seattle at the time. And once you played Birdland, there was nothing else. So the only option for Jimmy was to leave, because he was he had so much passion for the guitar and the music that he had to go on. Like, he would wake up in the morning and it'd be on his chest, and he would go to sleep playing it and wake up in the morning playing it. We weren't proud at the time when Jimmy was playing in the band. You know why? Because my father, he only thought about working. Jimmy was playing guitar. My dad said, oh, you're never gonna make it, give it up, I'm not playing those strings, I'm not doing nothing, you need to work. Because my father came out of depression, so like the work ethic was really strong with him. But Jimmy, he couldn't be stopped. He had to leave Seattle, to reach that goal.